The Gallant Venture's war room was filled with tension as the crew stared at the tactical map. Casimir Khan's eyes were fixed on the display, while Javier W. remained silent, his lower lip trembling. Felicity's censure was biting her nail in frustration, and Maximilian User tried to remain outwardly calm. Gallant Venture, this is a shocking turn of events, Maximilian said, his gaze locked on the map. The Samuel's Glory has sustained heavy damage, yet it still has a surprising number of fighters at its disposal. How is that possible? Casimir replied agitatedly. We all saw what was chasing their wing. You said so yourself, Maximilian, there was no way they could have survived against such a force. Javier finally found his voice. Are you telling us that a wing was able to contend with and defeat a force 5 times their strength in numbers? That seems preposterous. Reality can be shocking and unbelievable, Javier, Maximilian acknowledged. If you have another explanation, please enlighten us. Javier grumbled but did not offer an alternative. Casimir spoke up. It's possible the pilots are Silver Aces, serving under an Astor with Redford Kalin as their leader and commander. That could make it feasible. Maximilian shook his head. Unlikely. Many of the exceptional or talented warriors who distinguish themselves are transferred to the Fifth Fleet or use their influence to ascend through the ranks. Bronze Aces are already uncommon, and Silver Aces are even rarer. Javier let out a choked, perturbed laugh. You can't possibly suggest that regular pilots were able to not only fight off an overwhelming enemy force, but have nearly 3/4 of them survive the encounter and come out victorious under the leadership of Redford Kalin. I believe it could be a possibility, Casimir replied, his eyes fixed on the map as it returned to the Samuel's Glory and the cattle ship. If Redford Kalin was the one leading them. Maximilian raised a finger. You forget 2 crucial details, Little Khan. First, Redford Kalin was sitting on the captain's chair the entire time, ever since the start of their initial assault up until moments before the jamming ended. There simply wouldn't be time for him to take direct command at any moment. He raised a second finger. Secondly, the jamming effect would prohibit him from doing so, even if he could. Javier asked hurriedly, then what are you suggesting, User? Maximilian's lips curved into an involuntary smirk. Someone else was acting as the wing leader. Someone skilled enough to not only survive, but achieve victory against such unlikely odds. Someone that Redford Kalin, and by extension Her Bloody Majesty Princess Clara Astor, trusts enough to not only lead such an assault, but to throw him into the pits of danger and believe he'll survive and come back. Wyatt Staples, Felicity hissed through clenched teeth. Precisely, Maximilian agreed, his eyes fixed on the map. Felicity's expression hardened. Then if you are correct, Maximilian, we must eliminate him. We'll be upon them in 3 hours and within range of our missiles before that. The Samuel's Glory has suffered tremendous damage, and according to their signatures, is running hot. Even if they try to escape the system, their stealth capabilities will be useless, and we'll be able to harass them endlessly outside their effective range. Maximilian's tone dripped with mockery. Your masterful insight and visionary strategic mind are captivating, Felicity. Felicity glared at him. It matters little, as long as we stay outside their effective range, even their pulse beam will be worthless. We simply have to target their most damaged areas and keep harassing them. Their missile stockpiles must be severely depleted after such an engagement. Casimir hummed thoughtfully. It is a viable strategy. The Samuel's Glory is wounded, running hot, and their shields were completely drained. It'll take them over a dozen hours to recover a significant percentage, even if they're willing to ignore their heat buildup. Their heat banks and sinks can't handle much more than they are now. They are in quite a precarious position. Javier chuckled. Boarding the ship itself is out of the question, but we can hit or destroy it with railgun strikes and constant barrages of missiles. Tragic as that outcome would be, the survivors might just do us a favor and land on the planet, where the lousy rebels and detestable aliens will welcome them with open arms. Maximilian glared at Javier, but before he could open his mouth, they all received an alert from Captain C. My lady, the cattle ship has suffered an internal explosion. Patching feed now. Instantly, the tactical map was updated, and over 1,000 small dots appeared, emerging from the cattle ship and moving directly toward the Samuel's Glory. She's dead, Felicity said with gusto, snapping her fingers. One of her maids presented a glass of wine, which Felicity drank from greedily until it was almost empty. Let us wait and enjoy the demise of the Reaper, shall we? Felicity continued. Perhaps the Lord Regent will grant us a title for our accomplishments. Victory over death, or Reaper's demise, sound rather catching, do they not? As beautiful as you are, Felicity, you can be quite crude and obtuse, Maximilian commented. Felicity chose to ignore his insult. The Reaper and her mongrel knight were able to trick me, this I will admit. But against what is coming for them, I doubt they can repeat such a feat. The odds are not in their favor. By Julius's name, even if all of those are just fighters, they'll overwhelm the Samuel's glory. Casimir pointed out, there must be bombers among them, perhaps even gunships. I don't see how they can survive against the coming assault. If I were Redford Kalen, I would start ordering personnel to board life pods and make their way down to the planet. Even then, I doubt the Drazen will simply allow them to escape after what they've done to them. Maximilian hated to admit it, but he couldn't see any viable way for the Samuel's glory to survive for much longer. To think that the Drazen would be the ones to end the lives of not only Princess Clara Astor, but also the lives of Cynthia Winfield and Redford Kalen, leaves a bad taste in my mouth. What was most tragic, however, was his missed chance to face off against Redford Kalen in combat and prove himself the superior pilot. Lamenting the loss of likely his only chance to face one of the men who inspired him to become what he is today, he didn't pay attention to the map until Javier's voice brought him back to reality. "What are the destroyers doing?" Javier asked hurriedly. Casimir replied, "They're changing course, calculating their new vector paths." After a few seconds, he let out a gasp. "They're heading on an intercept course against the gallant Venture." "What?" Felicity cried out. "How is that possible? We're moving in closer, but our stealth system should be able to keep us hidden." Javier protested, "We have to veer off. Spineless coward, you'd rather run away before ensuring the Wicked and her followers are dead. Wounded honor is not worth losing your life and ours over." Javier continued, "I knew you were a coward, Javier, but to such a degree." Felicity sneered. "One more word out of your mouth and I shall send you to the brig," Felicity threatened. Javier glared at her and clenched his teeth tightly, but said nothing, choosing instead to leave the room. Maximilian turned to Casimir. "Clever monsters. They must have left behind a probe of their own. Once the jamming ended, they detected our presence and now they're moving to face us." Javier's outburst had been amusing, but Maximilian knew they had to act quickly. "I warned you they were likely to do something like this, Felicity. We should have stayed put at the edges of the system, as I suggested. Fortunately, we have time. We can still escape unscathed. But why are they moving to attack us?" Javier protested as he left the room. Casimir replied, "They must believe we're here to support the princess. Once their fighters are done eliminating the Samuel's glory, they'll come for us if we don't move to leave now." All eyes turned back to the map, where several small dots emerged from the Samuel's glory's bottom. "Are those more fighters?" Felicity asked. "No, their signature is too small," Casimir answered. "By the spirits of my ancestors, those must be mining drones." "Mining drones?" Javier asked, his panic momentarily forgotten. "Why? How do they plan to use mere mining drones? Why are they forming up at the front of the ship? Could they be forming a shield of sorts, a diversion tactic perhaps?" Maximilian offered. "There's 200 drones," Casimir replied, watching the map intently. "Even if they use them for ramming, they won't do much if any damage to the Drazen." Casimir's eyes widened as he continued, "No, wait, they're dumping them together. The smaller dots combined into several dozen bigger ones, their sensors enhanced by the still-active probes, giving the gallant Venture crew the clearest image of what was happening." They all watched in stunned silence as the Samuel's glory unleashed wave after wave of missiles, depleting even more of their dwindling ammunition. The Drazen responded in kind, though just enough to intercept them before any potential damage could be achieved. A few moments later, the drones began to move as one toward the Drazen formation. "What are they planning? Why haven't they begun evacuating procedures?" Felicity asked, intrigued. "I don't know. I truly don't," Casimir replied, baffled. Maximilian couldn't blame the young Casimir. He too was at a loss for words, unable to imagine what Redford Kalen was planning to achieve. After a tense minute of bated breath, the drones suddenly gained speed. Once they were close enough to the Drazen formation, they drove into its center. Half a minute later, the map was distorted for several seconds, but when it returned to normal, the Drazen forces had been reduced to a few dozen signals, most of which continued to disappear, either destroyed or going silent. No order was needed to be issued, as only a few seconds later, Every screen in the war room came to life, showing the borrowed perspective of the Gallant Venture's external cameras, zoomed in as much as possible. The video wasn't the best due to the distance, but it helped reduce the light lag. Until, impossibly, before their unbelieving eyes, a tiny, short-lived star appeared on the screen, leaving only an expanding cloud of searing hot plasma particles and radiation. It cannot be, Felicity finally muttered after an eternity of cold silence. She placed a hand on her stomach, suddenly feeling ill. How? That woman is a curse upon her enemies. A curse. Javier exclaimed, his legs trembling. Casimir, Maximilian, explain now. Casimir was simply shaking his head slowly, unblinking, as disbelief coursed through his body. The lone wolf, unlike his companions, never felt his heart beating as hard as right at that precise moment. It only increased when the fighters moved in after the cloud created by the explosion was no longer a danger to them, to deal with the few remaining stragglers. His eyes were then drawn to a dot that was leaving the Samuel's Glory, heading for the cattle ship. They're going to board it, he muttered, as disbelief, surprise, weariness, and excitement filled his beating heart at the same time. Captain Zero, prepare our fleet to engage the destroyers, Felicity cried out, her face showing unbridled rage, contempt, and uncaged fury. After that, we shall destroy their ship and end that murderous, Felicity began, but Javier protested loudly. Captain C, belay that order. Get us out of here. I am your superior, his Lord Regent placed me as the leader of this fleet. My orders are final. Felicity tossed the glass of wine at Javier, who ducked to avoid being hit. Prepare for the engagement, destroy those ships once we are within range, no matter the cost. The Reaper must die, for the glory of the Principality. The Principality are just yours, Maximilian questioned with a disapproving look, earning a burning glare from Felicity. You understand that you're angry, Felicity, but facing those Drazen and then the Samuel's Glory, no matter how exposed they are, won't be easy, Maximilian sighed. They have more than proven that they won't go down without a fight. Maximilian continued, we must leave. Our original mission was fulfilled, even if it was not what you wanted. Where is your pride, your honor? That heartless viper deceived us, deceived me. We failed the Lord Regent. We must correct our mistake and clean the stain she and her mongrel inflicted upon our honor as nobles in our houses. Such insolence cannot go unpunished. Felicity considered Casimir's warnings, but the moment of clarity was dwarfed and swallowed by the disdain and pure hatred that consumed her heart and mind. We will attack, that is my final order, Felicity declared firmly, leaving no room for interpretation or protest. Maximilian glared at Felicity for several seconds, their eyes locking in an invisible battle, until he closed his eyes and bowed his head in submission. I am bound by contract, duty, and honor to obey house censure. Your command shall be obeyed, Lady Felicity, Maximilian said, raising his head. But let it be known that I disagree with your decision most vehemently. Duly noted, user, Felicity replied. Now go, get our fighters ready. Show our enemies what a lone wolf can do. Turning to Casimir, Felicity continued, come with me, Casimir. I'll need your help crafting a proper surrender demand. Javier glared at Felicity and clenched his teeth tightly, but said nothing, choosing instead to leave the room. As Maximilian walked out, he couldn't hide his smirk anymore. Fate had been kind to him. Perhaps his desire to face Redford Kalen in battle could be fulfilled still, a pleasant thought if nothing else. Meanwhile, in a different part of the ship, Princess Clara Astor stood before Lord Estelfinus, the violet-eyed blonde displaying an unfeeling, cold-as-stone expression. Felicity censure and her ilk are present in the system, Clara said. Should they prevail against the Drazen destroyers, and I believe they shall, though at a cost, they are certainly going to strike against us, Estelle. They likely seek my death and the destruction of my vessel and everyone in it. Estelle rose to his feet, slamming his armored hands on the table. That is an outrage, he yelled, pointing a finger aimlessly. Surely they know I'm on board. They wouldn't dare to put my life at risk and incite the rage of my parents and House Venus. Clara replied calmly, as sad as the reality may be, Lord Estelle, your life is meaningless to them if it means ending mine in the process. The ramifications of your demise at their hands would be, shall we say, negligible compared to the enormous benefit, status, and accolades mine would bring them. It is worth the price, if I say so myself. Estelle stared at her, anger still evident on his face. Then let me open a communication channel. This is Renty's territory, neutral grounds. Lady Felicity shall listen to reason. Clara giggled softly. My Lord Estelle, I'm afraid you're mistaken. This system is a fallen one. We've won the battle, yes, but the planet remains in control of traitors and rebels. Killing you is a political liability they can endure and surely use in their favor. At most, your father, Lord Jennick, will demand retribution to be paid either in blood, resources, or political favors. At worst, Felicity's censure will be able to underplay the impact of your demise to the point of irrelevance. The Resonance Protocol, Prologue, The Whisper Between Stars. In the quantum archives of humanity's most deeply hidden repository, there exists a memory older than civilization itself, a memory of a choice that would reshape the destiny of not just one species, but countless civilizations across the galaxy. The archives remember when humanity first discovered the fundamental truth that technology without wisdom is a path to extinction. It began, as many profound revelations do, with a whisper. Part 1. The Quantum Archaeologists. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood motionless, her quantum scanner trembling in her hand. The artifact before her defied every conventional understanding of archaeological science. It wasn't just old, it was impossibly, incomprehensibly ancient. The device, if one could even call it that, seemed to pulse with an inner light that didn't conform to any known spectrum. Its molecular structure suggested origins that predated not just human civilization, but potentially the current configuration of our galaxy itself. Maya, she called softly into her quantum communicator, you're going to want to see this. Thousands of kilometers away, in a facility hidden beneath the Mariana Trench, Commander Maya Patel's avatar materialized, a shimmer of blue quantum light that carried the weight of millennia. Show me, she said. The artifact Elena had discovered was small, no larger than an human palm. Its surface seemed to shift and change, not through any mechanical means, but as if its very molecular structure was in constant, subtle communication with the universe around it. Carbon dating is impossible, Elena explained, her voice a mixture of scientific excitement and deep, existential wonder. But our quantum resonance scanners suggest this object is at least 3 million years old. And yet, it appears functional. Maya's avatar studied the artifact, layers of computational analysis dancing across her quantum consciousness. Functional isn't the right word, she murmured. It's communicating. Part 2, The Hidden Guardians. Humanity's true history was not a linear progression of technological advancement, but a complex tapestry of rises and falls, of civilizations that had touched the very edges of godlike power and then deliberately stepped back. They had learned, through catastrophic failures that had nearly erased them from existence, that the most dangerous weapon is not a tool of destruction, but unchecked ambition. The artifact Elena had discovered was just one of thousands, strategic seeds planted across the galaxy, waiting for the right civilizations to find them, to learn from them. This isn't just an archaeological discovery, Maya explained to the gathering of Earth's most senior quantum archaeologists and diplomatic corps. This is a message, a test. The room, which existed simultaneously in multiple quantum states, grew silent. Dr. James Martinez, humanity's foremost expert on intercivilizational development, leaned forward. His seemingly simple cotton uniform belied technologies that could reshape reality itself. The Resonance Protocol, he said softly, is about to enter its next phase. Part 3, First Contact. The Zarn delegation arrived exactly as predicted, not through conventional hyperspace transit, but emerging from quantum fluctuations that suggested they had been subtly guided, their entire journey a carefully orchestrated introduction. Their ship was a marvel of biomechanical engineering, its hollow living membrane that seemed to breathe and pulse with an intelligence far beyond mere mechanical design. Yet to the hidden guardians of humanity, it was almost charmingly primitive. Ambassador Krelax, a being composed of intricate crystalline structures that shifted and reformed with each emotional nuance, approached the carefully prepared reception facility, a structure that appeared, to the untrained eye, as nothing more than a simple research outpost. What the Zarn didn't realize was that every molecule of that facility was a quantum communication node, transmitting and receiving information across multiple dimensional planes. We have traveled, Ambassador Krelax announced, their crystalline form refracting light in complex patterns that served as both communication and emotional expression, to understand the mysterious signal that has been guiding our technological development for the past 3 centuries. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, now serving as humanity's primary diplomatic interface, smiled. A smile that carried millennia of carefully cultivated wisdom. Welcome, she said, to the first lesson. Previous content continues. Part 4, The Quantum Seed. The facility where Elena received the Zarn delegation was a masterpiece of deliberate contradiction. On its surface, it appeared to be a modest research station nestled in the Atacama Desert. Simple solar panels, utilitarian prefabricated structures, and equipment that looked decades old. But every careful observer knew that appearances were humanity's most sophisticated technology. Ambassador Krelax's crystalline form shifted with curiosity as Elena led them through the facility. Primitive computer terminals stood alongside quantum interfaces that could process more information in a microsecond than most civilizations could in a millennium. A rusted filing cabinet sat next to a holographic projection system that could map entire galactic histories. "You seem confused," Elena said, noting the ambassador's fractalized expressions. The Zarn communicated through light patterns, and right now, Krelax was projecting pure bewilderment. "Your technological infrastructure," the ambassador responded, "light patterns dancing, is inconsistent." Elena's smile was patient. Inconsistency is the most profound form of complexity. In a side room, an old mechanical typewriter sat beside a quantum entanglement communication device. A steam engine model stood near a temporal manipulation interface. Each object was not just a piece of technology, but a lesson, a quantum seed waiting to germinate in the minds of developing civilizations. Part 5, The Resonance Methodology. Deep beneath the Antarctic, in a facility that existed both everywhere and nowhere, Commander Maya Patel reviewed the initial contact protocols. The Zarn were just one of 17 civilizations currently being guided, each at a different stage of technological and philosophical development. Initial resonance frequency is stable, her quantum avatar reported. The avatar was a marvel, capable of existing simultaneously across multiple dimensional planes, processing billions of potential scenarios each millisecond. Dr. Martinez appeared, his holographic form wearing the same simple cotton uniform he always wore. A uniform that was, in itself, a sophisticated quantum camouflage capable of adapting to any environment or perception. There, close to the first threshold, he observed, studying the complex quantum modeling of the Zarn civilization's development. The first threshold was crucial, the moment when a civilization realized that technological power was not an end, but a responsibility. Humanity had learned this lesson through millennia of near-extinction events, through civilizations that had risen and fallen, each time getting closer to understanding. Part 6, The Artifact's Whisper. Back in the Atacama facility, Elena placed the ancient artifact on a simple wooden table in front of Krelax. To the Zarn, it appeared to be nothing more than an irregularly shaped piece of crystalline material. But as their sensory appendages approached, the artifact began to resonate. Not with sound, not with light, but with something deeper, a quantum frequency that carried memories, lessons, warnings. The Zarn ambassador's crystalline structure began to vibrate, translating the artifact's encoded information. Memories of civilizations that had reached for infinite power and found only destruction. Civilizations that had wielded technologies capable of reshaping galaxies, only to realize the true power was in choosing not to reshape. "What is this?" Krelax managed, their light patterns becoming erratic. Elena's response was calm, a memory, a warning, a lesson. The artifact was showing the Zarn their possible futures, not as a prediction, but as a collection of potential paths. Civilizations that had chosen expansion over understanding. Races that had sought perfection and found only sterility. And then, glimpses of another way, a path of careful growth, of wisdom over power. Part 7, The Void's Invitation. While the Zarn processed their quantum revelation, something stirred in the dark spaces between stars. The Void Heralds, an ancient force that predated known galactic history, were watching. They were not enemies, precisely. They were a test, a cosmic mechanism that evaluated civilizations' readiness to truly advance. Their invitation was always the same: accept perfect stasis, or face the chaos of true evolution. Humanity had faced this invitation millennia ago, and they had chosen something radical, neither acceptance nor rejection, but transformation. Now, they were preparing younger civilizations to face the same choice. Previous content continues. Part 8, Convergence. The quantum networks that humanity had carefully woven across the galaxy began to pulse with an unusual frequency. Something was changing, something was approaching. In the facility beneath the Mariana Trench, Commander Maya Patel watched as multiple dimensional monitoring systems began to synchronize. The Zarn's encounter with the artifact was triggering a cascade of quantum resonances that would soon involve multiple developing civilizations. Initiate Phase 2, she commanded, her quantum avatar splitting into multiple synchronous streams. Across the galaxy, seemingly unrelated events began to unfold. On the methane seas of the Krix homeworld, archaeologists discovered an artifact that was simultaneously ancient and new. In the quantum archives of the Nexus Collective, historical records began to shift, revealing hidden connections. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, still with the Zarn delegation, noticed the first subtle changes. Ambassador Krelax, she said quietly, "What do you understand now?" The Zarn's crystalline form pulsed with a complex light pattern, no longer just communication, but something closer to comprehension. The artifact had shown them not just potential futures, but potential choices. Part 9, the Quantum Threshold. The Void Heralds were more than just a threat. They were a cosmic mechanism of evaluation, a test that every advanced civilization must face. Their invitation was always the same: accept perfect stasis or confront the chaos of true evolution. Humanity had long ago rejected both options, choosing instead a third path: dynamic adaptation. Deep within the Antarctic facility, Dr. James Martinez studied the emerging quantum patterns. The Zarn were approaching their first true test, the moment when a civilization realizes that technological power is not an end, but a responsibility. "They're close," he murmured to Maya. "Very close." The facility around him was a study in controlled chaos. Quantum computers that could process entire galactic histories stood next to preserved mechanical adding machines. Temporal manipulation interfaces were calibrated using slide rules. Every piece of technology told a story, a lesson about the dangers of unchecked advancement. Part 10. The resonance expands. As the Zarn processed their quantum revelation, other civilizations began to resonate. The quantum seeds that humanity had carefully planted over millennia were beginning to germinate. The Krix discovered archaeological evidence that challenged their entire understanding of technological development. The Nexus Collective found historical records that suggested their civilization's progress had been subtly guided. None of this was coincidence. "The protocol is working," Maya observed, watching multiple dimensional displays that showed the interconnected quantum awakening. Each civilization was being presented with the same fundamental choice that humanity had faced millennia ago: the choice between power and wisdom, between expansion and understanding. The Void Heralds watched, their crystalline consciousness sensing the subtle shifts in galactic potential. Something was changing, something was emerging. And humanity was at the center of it all, not as conquerors, not as saviors, but as quiet guardians of a more profound evolution. On Cheki Isurik Devamader, Part 11, the Convergence. The quantum resonance reached its critical point exactly 73 years, 6 months, and 14 days after the first seed was planted in the Zarn civilization. It was not a coincidence. Nothing humanity did was ever a coincidence. In the facility beneath the Mariana Trench, Commander Maya Patel watched as the final phase of the resonance protocol began to unfold. Civilizations across the galaxy, some aware, some blissfully ignorant, were about to face their ultimate test. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood with Ambassador Krelax in the Atacama facility. The artifact that had initially sparked their awakening now pulsed with an intensity that seemed to bend the very fabric of reality. "Do you understand now?" Elena asked. The Zarn's crystalline form shifted, light patterns revealing a complexity of emotion that few species could comprehend. "We are not the first," Krelax responded, "and we will not be the last." Part 12, the Void's Challenge. The Void Heralds approached not with weapons, but with a proposition. Their crystalline ships moved through space like thoughts through consciousness, precise, purposeful, utterly alien. Their message was always the same. Always perfect, always terrifying in its simplicity. Surrender to stasis, accept perfection, cease changing. But humanity had learned millennia ago that perfection was not an endpoint, but a prison. In the quantum archives beneath Antarctica, Dr. James Martinez began the final sequence. Quantum interfaces that had been dormant for centuries began to activate. Artifacts hidden on thousands of worlds started to resonate. "It's time," he said simply. Part 13, the lesson. The confrontation, when it came, was nothing like anyone expected. The Void Herald's crystalline ships surrounded Earth, not to destroy, but to evaluate. Their sensors probed every quantum frequency, every potential timeline. They sought weakness. They sought an opportunity to convert, to assimilate, to perfect. Instead, they found something they could not comprehend. Humanity did not resist, they did not fight, they simply taught. Every primitive technology became a lesson. Steam engines revealed complex mathematical principles. Simple mechanical clocks demonstrated the nature of entropy. An old typewriter became a gateway to understanding communication beyond language. The Zarn watched, the Krix observed, the Nexus Collective processed. Civilizations across the galaxy held their collective breath. Part 14. The Choice. Maya Patel stepped forward, her quantum avatar manifested not as a weapon, but as pure information, a bridge between understanding and potential. You offer perfection, she said to the Void Heralds. We offer something more valuable. Growth. The crystalline ships hesitated. For the first time in their existential journey, they encountered a force they could not categorize, could not assimilate, could not perfect. Imperfection, choice, evolution. Part 15. Aftermath. When it was over, the Void Heralds did not retreat. They did not surrender. They simply transformed, became something else, something that could learn. The galaxy watched and began to understand. Ambassador Krelax turned to Elena Rodriguez. The simple gesture spoke volumes. What happens now?